My boss loves to call me at 6:15 a.m. to ask me if I would like to fill the shifts of the people who just called in sick. This is an everyday thing. I was bored and frustrated, so I decided to volunteer at 3:30 a.m. to call this same manager to ask if they needed extra help. He got super pissed and tried to write me up for it. I showed the GM the timestamps of the calls I had received. I don't get calls anymore. I quit my last job because of those calls. They started out as texts first and then I would get a flurry of texts. My boss told the girl that would call out sick all the time, every Sunday/Saturday morning, to just call me in the morning. Oh hell no, the worst part of it is that we had a policy that you couldn't call out sick more than a few times here or there. When my old job added an extra shift in the warehouse, I worked in the office doing customer service. My boss told me that he instructed the night crew to call me if they had questions about orders, shipping, etc. I told him they could call but I won't answer. He was pissed and asked why. I reminded him I was hourly, not salary, and once I clocked out my day was done. Most people in my department were on salary. I told him I would take calls if I got overtime. Good GM, and clever idea on your part. I really lucked out when I was a waiter. There were always people looking to pick up shifts. I was even able to take vacations by trading shifts with people. Also, the managers knew my lazy butt would almost always be the least likely to show up on short notice, so on the rare occasions they called, they were in dire straits and offered a bonus. I had something similar but not the same. Instead, when people called off, they wouldn't even bother calling me. Instead, they'd take a pen and write it on the schedule I had taken a pic of 5 days before. Wouldn't be such a problem, but it was always the very next day and I was either not working that day or had already left work, so I couldn't even double check. I snapped at the manager who was doing that to me. He called me like he always did and asked why I wasn't at work. I've had so many calls like this. I just screamed at him, told him he needs to call me and tell me if I could cover instead of expect me to. Somehow read his mind. I brought the up with the other managers and they finally fixed the problem. By then, though, I was just done. I quit shortly afterwards. Good for you, lol. I had a manager who would pull the same shiz. He'd call me on my day off 30 minutes before a shift started and try to get me to cover it. If I tried saying I'd already been there over 40 hours that week and that he hadn't given me nearly enough notice, he'd get super oppressive and be like, we are all needed to make sure things keep running smoothly. I'm asking for a tiny little bit of extra effort and you can't even seem to do that. Blah blah. He was a new manager and new to the company, and I was already picking up tons of extra, uncompensated slack since I'd been with the company so long. He transferred me to a less busy location to spite me since I'd make less money. I appealed to the owners who I'd worked for years and they literally didn't bother texting or calling me back. He got fired eventually. The shop went to shiz. The owners begged me to come back. Oh, you do have my number. I laughed and rode away into the sunset and they sold the business, lol. Not to imply I was single-handedly keeping things afloat, but I'm guessing they treated other loyal employees similarly. Anyway, you go. Screw that guy. Oh, how the tables have tabled. At a job I worked in my early 20s, they had a great system for this. You could volunteer to be on standby in case people called in sick. Just for being on standby and calling in at 8 a.m. to check if you were needed, you got $10. I think $20 on the weekends, and if you ended up having to cover someone else, you got hourly pay on top of your salary for the hours worked, completely voluntary, and you were the one calling in. Of course, one of the reasons it worked was the sheer number of potential people who could cover you. I would have been pissed if I had been called at 6 a.m. and asked to cover shifts. My last job was so freaking obsessive about this, only they'd blow up my phone as early as 4 a.m. I'm so glad I quit. Have a day off? 5 to 10 calls, 3 or 4 texts. It was fudging ridiculous, and they get super butthurt if you don't answer and cut your hours for it. Like, if it's your day off, they need to respect that. If you don't answer on your day off, they shouldn't take it personally because it's your day off. Back when I used to work at Wendy's, my GM had a creative way to try and get coverage for callouts, mandatory uncompensated on-call. It worked for shiz though. Turns out when you tell high school students that they have to block off 4 hours of after-school time to wait by the phone without being paid, you get shiz results. It also didn't help that the place was dripping with nepotism. I actually remember once a manager asked why I didn't pick up, and I just pointed at the on-call schedule and said, I've never seen GM's son on this schedule. And he's more than capable of picking up some slack here and there. Once I see his name on that schedule, maybe I'll start answering my phone. Remote worker here. I had a boss who bitched about admin time booked was too high, asked me to look over it and reduce. Spent 2 hours doing it, rang him and told him I saved 1 HR, but I need to book the 2 hours doing the looking, and result another hour added to admin, winking face. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe. It's free. Check out some other videos I've made.